Welcome to another Quality Quarantine. My name is Hillary Ferrer. I'm from Mama Bear Apologetics, and with me is
Amy Davison, also from Mama Bear Apologetics.
Elizabeth Urbanowitz from Foundation Worldview.
And Lindsay Medenwalt from Mama Bear Apologetics.
So today on Worldview Wednesday, we're going to be talking about what are some of the differences between the actual biblical account of the Exodus with Moses. So on Movie Monday, we watched
Prince of Egypt.
Thank you. Y'all keep having to tell me because for some reason I have Joseph, Prince of Dreams in my head every single time, which I haven't even seen. Yes, Prince of Egypt, and how it was the story of Moses. And so we thought it would be a great thing to watch that movie, but then also read what the actual biblical accounts are in there. And so, Elizabeth, tell us some of your thoughts when you used to read this to your elementary school kids, and what were some of the things that you would point out to them as being different between the movie and the actual account?
Yeah, this is a great activity to do with kids just because, there's so many great different Bible stories and movies out there, but to make sure that our kids really understand the biblical narrative is to actually read through a part of it with them and then talk about, okay, what parts of the movie lined up or what parts of the story lined up with the biblical narrative and what parts don't. It's part of that Mama Bear chew and spit, even with things that are biblical and our kids see as safe. So one thing that's just really clear throughout this movie that I would always try to make sure that my students picked up on is that in the Prince of Egypt, Moses is really presented as this hero. He's just kind of like, he's the good guy, he's innocent, he's leading his people out of slavery, where when we look at the biblical narrative, that is not what the story of the Exodus is about. God is not about making heroes. God is about using everyday, ordinary, broken people to display his glory. And in the Prince of Egypt, Moses is really innocent in that, he accidentally knocks somebody, off of the scaffolding and they die. Where in the biblical account, it says he looked to the left and he looked to the right. And when he realized no one was around, he killed the Egyptians. So he murdered him, in cold blood. And, just having our kids see that this really isn't a story about Moses. This is a story about God and what he is doing, to rescue his people, but ultimately to redeem humanity. This is part of that biblical meta narrative. So I just recommend, just reading through parts of the narrative with your kids and then having them compare and contrast, okay, what parts of this movie were faithful to this and what parts weren't. Can be a great activity to do.
Oh, yeah. And I like how you pointed out how God's glory can be seen in that. And I think that's one thing that's important to help kids see is God's glory is sometimes shown through us through whenever we are acting in accordance to his will. And you see that, with the apostles and that sort of thing. But his glory is also seen in people who are in active rebellion. So you see his glory being shown sort of because of Pharaoh's disobedience. You see him working through that. And in fact, God mentions multiple times, my glory will be revealed through him, through the hardening of his heart and that sort of thing. So God's glory can be seen in the negative as well as with the positive. And it reminds me of this, of course my phone froze up. It reminds me of this great quote by C.S. Lewis. There's any great quote out there, it's pretty much going to be C.S. Lewis. It's probably C.S. Lewis. But I love this because I think it's really good at capturing it. It says, for you will certainly carry out God's purpose however you act, but it makes a difference to you whether you serve like Judas or like John. And so it just shows that, God is actively involved in all things. And so, it does make a difference in how we act and model what he has for us to do.
That's kind of reminds me of what my pastor used to say, and I always thought this was funny. He'd say, there's no such thing as a pointless life. Anyone can serve as a bad example. And I used to tell, back when I was a teacher, I used to tell my kids that too. I'm like, hey, nobody, everybody has value. Everyone can be a bad example. And which, sounds kind of bad, but I think it kind of gets the point across that it's you are going to, like you said, God's glory will either be shown through you or because of you. And it's up to you which way you want his glory to be shown by.
Yeah. I think I mentioned this on Monday's video that, this particular biblical narrative was difficult for me to grasp as a child. Just the idea of why is God doing this? And sending that message home with your kids is I think really imperative in letting them know, hey, this is why God carried out these acts in Exodus. So in Exodus 6, 2-8, which I'm going to take a moment to read because this is a Christian video and we should be reading the Bible every once in a while. So I'm going to read 6, 2-8. It says, so this is the Lord speaking to Moses, because Moses is, questioning God as he did. God spoke further to Moses and said to him, I am the Lord, and I appeared to Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob as God Almighty. But by my name, Lord, I did not make myself known to them. I also established my covenant with them to give them the land of Canaan, the land in which they sojourned, which is a big word. You can explain that to your kids. Furthermore, I have heard the groaning of the sons of Israel because the Egyptians are holding them in bondage, and I have remembered my covenants. Say therefore to the sons of Israel, I am the Lord, and I will bring you out from under the burdens of the Egyptians, and I will deliver you from their bondage. I will also redeem you with an outstretched arm and with great judgments. Then I will take you for my people, and I will be your God, and you shall know that I am the Lord your God, who brought you out from under the burdens of the Egyptians. I will bring you to the land which I swore to give to Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob, and I will give it to you for a possession. I am the Lord.
So many I ams I am and I will.
Yeah.
I am, I will. I am, I will.
Yeah, and I think reminding our kids, this is tough to swallow. Like reading about these plagues, even just changing water to blood, that's really disgusting and really
yeah, when you really think about it,
it's gross. And and what damage that would do if a vital river or vital water source was turned to blood. The nutrients are no longer there and things. Yeah. So just that one plague, and then you add on frogs and locusts, and I would do horrible with the locusts. That would just not be a good one for me. All the other things, and then of course the Passover. That's a really difficult one to talk about with our kids as well. So reminding them that it goes all the way back to the covenant that the Lord made with Abraham, and saying, this is what I promised to do, and I'm going to carry that out. And it's not, an individual thing necessarily. It's, God's faithfulness is not that all of us will have comfort in life. God's faithfulness is that he will fulfill his covenants, and he is fulfilling a covenant here. So reminding our kids, it's tough, but there was a purpose for God's behavior and God's action. And he doesn't just do things nilly-willy.
Yeah, it was.
I don't know why
his purpose was being
it's very old-fashioned.
Wait, what was that last thing you said?
I said, I don't know why I said nilly-willy. That's very old-fashioned. Are you in an Amish novel right now?
See? I don't know. You were getting a bit lippy if that's an Amish novel.
Oh goodness. Well, so those are just some things you can talk about with your kids when it comes to comparing the scriptural passage with how the movie portrayed. And I think it's also like Lindsay said, showing that God's faithfulness, that's what he's trying to show his people in this, that he will be faithful, he will redeem, because he says, I am the Lord your God. And some of the things that we don't understand in our lives, it's because he is saying, I am the Lord your God. Do not forget that. And I just think it's always wise whenever you get the opportunity to remember the Lord your God. It's like, don't let it get to that point where he has to do something big to get your attention. Let him get your attention with the little things. Life will be much better. But at the same time, it doesn't guarantee us a life that's free from suffering, because as we see in the first century with the apostles that were all martyred for their faith, and Jesus did not die to give us the American dream. That's not the purpose of his death. And that's not the purpose of his salvation. So there's practical aspects of just knowing who the Lord our God is, but then also practical aspects of this life is hard. And so anyway, so that would be a comparison with the biblical and the movie. So that's all we got for Worldview Wednesday today. Thanks so much. We'll see you for Theology Thursday tomorrow, where we're going to talk about sanctification. Bye.
All right, we'll see you.
Bye.